our speaker number 2 today will be giving his project number 7, which is titled Research Your Topic. Now, has everyone, or has anyone here heard of the gentleman called Joshua C. Smedley? No? He's the founder of Toastmasters International back 100 years ago. Well, he won't be speaking today, but our next speaker is the legendary founder of our Marty Toastmasters. Similar capacity. His passion for Toastmasters is to meet interesting people who have a desire to change the world. So that will be us. In 5 to 10 years, he sees himself as being some type of a guru of some sort, spending lots of time with family and friends. Speaking to the topic, Life After Death, our own Amati Club guru, Tom Bartkoske.
I have a confession to make. I am obsessive compulsive. Not in cleaning my house. My wife would love if I was a little obsessive compulsive about that. Not in being on time. But I'm obsessive compulsive from a long time ago. Even when I was a student, I had difficulty relaxing. My friends would sit back and they'd watch a movie and just laugh and enjoy it. Not me. When I'd watch a movie, I think, that's 2 hours of my life. I have to redeem that. I've got to pull some life lesson from this movie. So this last weekend, our Amati Toastmasters Club organized a social. We went to see the movie Everest at the Ace and Time Mall. And I was a little disappointed when I first show up. Everyone's like, you know it's in Russian, right? You know it's in Russian, right? I'm like, da, я понимаю русский чуть-чуть. But they're all like, even though in Toastmasters we're all speaking English, I do understand a little bit of Russian. Ilyas, Olga, others. It's okay. So I was a little offended about that. So I thought, I've really got to redeem this time, especially if I'm watching a movie in Russian. And so what I came up with when I watched this movie, how many have seen the movie already, Everest? Okay, just a few of you. So I won't give any spoilers. But there'll be one small spoiler, is that in the movie, some people die. Okay? And they die a slow death. And I was just thinking afterwards, talking with some other people who attended, like, what goes through your mind before you die? And then it's like, well, what happens after you die? Is that it? Is that all there is? And because one of the conversations that took place before someone died is like thinking, will he ever see his loved ones again on the other side of death? And so being obsessive compulsive again, I'm a researcher, I'm an engineer by training. And so sometimes I like to look at things from a scientific point of view. But I realize there's 2 main ways of verifying things or knowing things. One is the scientific approach. The other is the historical approach of knowing things. Because science is about having hypotheses, being able to repeat things, seeing the same results again. When it's events that have happened, historical events, you can't repeat them until scientists invent a time machine. Which, I know some of you probably believe they are time machines. I'm not yet convinced they exist. So we have to leave it with these 2 approaches. So we approach this question of life after death. And in Everest, people encounter that. Well, to be honest, each one of you is going to encounter death. You know, there's only 2 things in life you cannot avoid: taxes and death. If you try to avoid taxes, you'll spend time in prison and then you'll die. But if you pay your taxes, you're still going to die. And so I was thinking at it from the scientific approach. How could you prove there's life after death? You know, so I would hop online, the internet, that's the way to go, right? Well, it's not always right. As I go through my speech, you'll see why. But there's a guy, a doctor from Haverhill, Massachusetts. I used to live in Boston, not far away. In fact, my wife has relatives from Haverhill, Massachusetts from a long time ago. And in 1901, he weighed people that had tuberculosis, who were going to die. And so he put them on some type of scale, seeing that when they died, could we measure how much the soul weighed? And so he did this with 6 or 7 different people. And he said they weighed about 21 grams, the soul did. He somehow measured, put them on a table before they died, and said, this is proof that we have a soul, because when we die, we weigh less. Now obviously later, people are like, well, maybe it was breath, giving out, or other things. And so they said he wasn't too accurate. Only 6 or 7 people in a sample, it's not enough. So I came across another article saying 2 German doctors were written up in the Horizon German scientific magazine, used a better scale that measured much more accurately. They weighed many more people before they died. And they came up with, though, that the soul, rather than 21 grams, only weighed 1/3000th of an ounce, which is like less than a gram. So there's a difference. But they said, people were citing this article, I'm looking, these people are citing it, these people are citing it, and I'm like, yes, here's my proof of that there's like a soul, and if there's a soul, there probably is some type of life after death. Well then, as you read the comments under the things, I'm reading more of the comments, and some people are like, I cannot find any German scientific magazine named Horizon, even though it's quoted in other things. And as we get looking, they go, these doctors don't even exist. So I don't know if you've ever heard what's called an urban legend. Mm-hmm. An urban legend is stories that get started and get repeated and people quote them, but it turns out even not to be true. But people, because they've been cited so often, people hear about them, they think they're true. Well, so I'm a little bit, can you weigh the soul? I don't know. So let's take the historical approach to this. And that's what we call NDEs, near-death experiences. These are personal accounts that many people have had of a near-death experience, where they have an out-of-body experience. And for most of them around the world, there's been many documented cases. Raymond Moody is one that popularized this NDE, near-death experience. And he researched him, and people after him have researched around the world. It doesn't matter what culture you're in, what religion, if you're an atheist, if you have a strong faith, if you're sick, if you're psychotic, or otherwise, there's no common denominator, but people all have very similar experiences. There's a light, there's a peace, there's a calmness, there's moving towards things. And obviously, if near-death experience they were clinically dead, their heart had stopped. There was supposedly no brain activity in their brain. And that's why they came back. And so, as I did more research on this, looking about it, thinking, YouTube, movies. Well, there's 2 movies and books that have come out about this. One is called Heaven is for Real. It's about a young boy, he was 3 or 4, had appendicitis and he almost died. And he had a near-death experience, and afterwards, as his father recorded this, saying that he told things that he couldn't have known outside the operating room, seeing his parents there, seeing other relatives that had died prior, and describing what they were like. He knew that he had a sister from a miscarriage even, and his parents had never told him about this. And so, believe it or not, after I read this book a few years ago, a businessman who's trying to do popcorn here in Kazakhstan, I met him and did a little consulting with him, and I said, are you from Nebraska? He's from the same town as where this happened. And I'm like, this is too good to be true. Do you know the story? Is it true? Did it really happen? And he was a little bit like, well, I've heard the story, but I'm a little bit skeptical if it really happened. And then after this, they actually made a movie of it. And for me personally, I met a gentleman here in Almaty, his name's Askar, who's personally told me he had a near-death experience. He was clinically dead on the table. He was above, he could see the operating room, he could see other rooms, and then he came back and was resuscitated. I have no reason to disbelieve him or not believe him. The other thing they said is that when people go, oftentimes they'll see a person. And if you're a person of faith, like Christians will see Jesus, Hindus will see the god of death or the king of death, each one different ones. And so how your experience depends a little bit on faith, what you experience and how you see. I'm personally a person of faith. And that's when I look at the historical approach, I'm like, where's an example of life after death that many of us have heard about or believe? And for me, it's studying the scriptures and understanding them, that Jesus died and he rose again from the dead. There's eyewitness accounts of over 500 people that saw him. He came and reported things. He ate things. I'm like, wow. Can I prove this scientifically? No, but historically, are the witnesses credible? In my mind, they are. In other people's minds, they're not. But anyway, it made me think again about watching movies and being back at Everest. And I thought, from a scene in that movie, if I'm ever with someone and they're close to the point of death, and it's like, what would I tell them? And I think I would follow the way it happened in the movie and say, I think you're going to see your loved ones after you're gone. There is something more beyond this life. And I think inside each one of us, we inherently know that.